KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
Welcome to the Central Valley Ledger, a show highlighting community members that have a positive influence on the Valley. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. We are recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative in Fresno and Clovis. We're also broadcasting on 90.7 FM KFSR Fresno and CMAC's public channel. In this edition of the Central Valley Ledger, we'll be talking to Don Scordino of Realty Concepts. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome back, I should say. This is a couple of times on the program here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first one, so it was no problem when you said, come on back.
So you're going to be Central Valley Ledger's expert in housing. How do you like that title?
I like it, and I hope my kids hear that I'm an expert in something.
So a lot of exciting and cool things happening with Realty Concepts. That's who you work for.
Yeah.
There's a new building or something going up in Clovis.
Yeah, it's going to be a branch office from our main office over on First and Alluvial, which that's new also. We've only been in that a little over a year, and it's a state-of-the-art building. The one in Clovis out by Centennial Plaza will be state-of-the-art also, and should be opening up in September.
There was something in the media recently about Realty Concepts having a kind of children's area for parents who work there. That's a great step. So exciting stuff happening there.
Yeah, the office that we have is state-of-the-art. I mean, it's futuristic. It's just a great place to work.
Tell us about yourself. You've been in real estate for a very long time. Were you born in Fresno or the Valley?
Yeah, born in Fresno and lived here all my life. I've done a lot of traveling, so I know other communities. I know other real estate markets, but I love this place. So
I invited you here because I wanted to ask you a little bit about the real estate market. And it's interesting because we're going to see photos later on in the program about one of your current listings and what to do when you're selling a home. But I hear that you listed something and in 2 days you've got 4 offers. Is that true?
That is true. And that's an example of the client and myself working well together, because we've actually, even though we've only been on the market 2 days, we've been working on it for 2 months. And I give all that to the sellers for taking the advice that I gave and fixing the home up. They didn't really spend a lot of money, but they made it a turnkey place, and we are fitting into the market perfectly.
So do you sell just residential or commercial only? I mean, is there a price range of homes that you sell?
Well, I sell residential. That's my expertise. When it comes to commercial, I don't think I would be a great agent. I might just have a license. It is the way to put that. But on price range, I can say last year, the lowest price one I sold was $15,000. It was a mobile home. And the highest price one I sold was $1.8 million.
$1.8 million.
So everything in between there.
You know, a lot of people don't realize that we in Fresno have beautiful multi-million-dollar homes. The one you sold for 1.8, if it was a while back, that value probably went up now. Tell us a little bit about that home that you sold for 1.8.
Well, first of all, it was on 30 acres, and it was about 3,500 square feet.
Big home, big land.
Yeah, yeah. And not too far from Fresno. It was actually across the border into Madera County.
Where are the expensive homes that we have in Fresno? Are they all on Van Ness, or can you find them in different spots?
Definitely different spots. Water seems to be a big draw. So if you're along the river bluff or maybe along Lake Van Ness or Woodward Lake or even the Pacific Ocean, that's why homes in the Bay Area are so expensive, because you're so close to water.
Are you seeing that people from out of town are buying and moving into homes? Now, I ask you the question because when the economy tanked and there was a time where things were very bad, you found investors coming in with cash, purchasing homes left and right, investors from out of town and investors from local area. Is that still happening, and are people coming from out of town to live here?
Investors are being outbid by homeowners now, or potential homeowners.
It was reversed before.
It was. And a big reason for that was the quality of the home. When the biggest seller were the banks during the foreclosure era, and the bank said, we're selling it as is, we're not going to touch a thing in that house, there was no financing available for some of those homes, so it went to who had the cash, which happened to be the investors. And that's what drove prices artificially low.
Now it seems like there's a lot more people who are buying and living in the home. What advice would you give for renters who now want to buy?
I would say that even though you hear things in the media that it's a seller's market, it's still a buyer's market because interest rates are so low. When you can buy a home and get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at a monthly cost that's lower than or maybe even equal to the rent, it's a great time to buy. And keep in mind, that fixes that mortgage payment for 30 years. If you're renting, could be next year your rent goes up.
Interest rates just went up, and there was a big deal in the media about it. People were panicking. People who hadn't bought a home yet were wondering now if they would be able to afford a home because interest rates gone up. Tell us a little bit about the increase in interest rates and what impact that has in home prices.
Well, it definitely has an impact, but it's not anything to panic over. And I'll give you an example. The average price of a home in Fresno County is $250,000. A 0.5% increase in the interest rate is going to raise your cost about $100 a month. That sounds like a lot, but when you figure that your payment would go from $1,600 to $1,700, that's probably still affordable. Then, to think of it in another way, that $1,600 or $1,700 a month will be fixed for 30 years. So in the year 2035, you still know what your payment's going to be. What's your rent going to be? That 0.5% increase in interest rate might equate to 2 years, maybe 3 years worth of rent increases.
As I hear you, you sound like an advocate for purchasing a home. Why sell us?
It's the American dream. And I recently had somebody, and God, I felt sorry for him. They lost their home, and he's trying to find a rental home. But they had 4 dogs. Well, he says they're rescue dogs, and people just don't understand. And it's like, well, when you lost your right to home ownership, you kind of gave up your right to think that way, because now you have to fit in with someone else. So when you own something, you are in charge of your land. I mean, provided you still have to conform with your neighborhood.
Yeah.
But you can't bring in five horses into a 60 by 100 foot lot. But you have property rights. You're truly enjoying freedom. And speaking of that, my mother immigrated from Italy, and that was the most important thing to her, was owning a home, because they owned a home in Italy and it was taken away.
Interesting.
By the government.
Interesting.
Of course, that was just before World War II, when everything went upside down there.
So what is the average time a property is on the market? And you don't have to know exactly, because that's kind of a tough question. And it's kind of a trick question in that there are some homes that stay on the market for a very long time, and then you've got some homes that sell right away.
It's actually a great question. And I'm going to put it into 2 categories. The homes that sell usually sell inside of 2 weeks on the market. The homes that are not selling and are not going to sell until something changes, like they clean the property up, get it prepared and presented properly, those can go 2, 3, 4 months. So if you were to average it all out, it's going to be right around 35 days.
That's so interesting. You have listings all over. There's a listing that you have in Kerman, the one we talked about, where you listed it 2 days ago and all of a sudden there's 4 offers. That house is going to be sold very soon. But the reason I bring it up is because we've got pictures of that house that we're going to show our audience members now. Let's start by showing the living room of that house, and you tell us what the home seller did that was right.
Okay, I will do that. First of all, even though we've been on the market 2 days, this living room looks so much different 2 months ago.
Oh, so did you encourage them to change that up?
Oh yeah, yeah, and they called me and said, our tenant just moved out, we want to sell it. They didn't even ask me to put it on the market. They said, come and tell me what we should do to maximize this. And I said, okay, I'm going to try to stay away from big dollar items. Like they did not put in granite countertops, hardwood floors, but they made it a very clean, respectable home that somebody is going to love.
And you talked a little bit about countertops. We're showing a picture, or we just showed a picture now, of the kitchen. So you don't necessarily need granite to make it appealing.
No, in fact, that's Formica.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, it's not even tile. But once again, that is going to be somebody's new home that they can build their own home from there. But it's good, clean, it will pass inspections by the home inspector, the appraiser, because those guys don't look at cosmetic things, they look at structural.
You know, one of the things that I liked about this the house that you have listed is the floor. Did you recommend that they change the floor? It looks like it's tile, but it was something else before.
No, well, the tile's been there for quite some time. What they did change, and you can't really see it from here, but you did in the other slide, was the carpet. So my advice to them was to paint the interior because it was kind of a dingy white, and they did. And then they said, you know, the carpet needs to be changed now too, because you had new paint against older carpet. And they tried having it shampooed. They spent $125 bucks, and it didn't come out quite the way they wanted. So they invested in new carpet, and that finished off the house. It looks beautiful.
So that investment that they make on the house, and I'm not asking for numbers, but compared to the value, would you say that the value was increased tremendously?
Yeah, I would say probably three times. So for every dollar they spent, they probably are going to get $3 back.
So one of my favorite parts of any house is the backyard. I spend a lot of time in my backyard, whether it's barbecuing or having people over and enjoying the backyard. I like this backyard too because there was a seating area in it. And so tell us a little bit about the backyard.
Well, actually, it's good and clean. The weeds are gone. It's got a RV parking in there with a big gate. So that makes it a unique property. Not very many homes in that price range are going to have the big side yard that allows for that.
So this one has all of that. It's clean, and so it looks like you're going to sell it here very soon.
I believe so.
You know, last time you were here, we were talking about buyers and home buying and that process. I want to focus a little bit more on selling. So if I have a house for sale and I call you, what is the first thing that you're going to do, and what advice would you give me?
The one that I give to a lot of people who live in the home is I ask them to move twice. And they always shake their head and say, what? What do you mean? And that's a nicer way of saying you got to get rid of the clutter. So if and I say move twice, the first time, move the non-essential items out of the home. You know, the little knickknacks, the papers that are piled up on the desk. Because when you get an offer and you accept it and you have 30 days to move, you're going to panic. So if you could do some of it before it goes on the market, and then make the home look like it has more space. The reason most people want to move is they need more space. So if they come into your home and you need more space too, and it looks like it's not going to be that right visual picture. That Kodak moment isn't going to be right for them.
So there are times where people list a house and they're still living in it, and then there are times where people list it and it's empty. What's your recommendation?
That comes into a personal matter, because I'm not going to tell somebody to move out of the home, although I did one time. But you know, they wanted to smoke in the house.
Oh.
And that just, and they also wanted top dollar. So, the way I got them to move is I quantified it. I said, okay, you can do that, but I really believe it's going to cost you an extra $10,000. They said, well, gosh, we could go in our RV and go around the country for a month. I said, good idea.
So Fresno and Clovis have been hot markets. Clovis right now is unbelievable, and it's been for the past 10 years. I don't want to downplay the hot markets, the other hot markets going on around the valley. Madera, a lot of building going on in Madera. There's some new developments out there. Is that the next kind of boom town?
Well, that's what I predicted, but that was 30 years ago that I predicted that. And one of these days, I'm going to be right. 30 years ago, I bought a house in Madera because I thought that was the next boom. So I'll be right pretty soon.
Your listing that you just put was in Kerman. Talk about the housing markets around. I mean, so we know that Fresno, Clovis, especially Clovis Unified Schools, a lot of people are moving out there for that reason. Are we seeing the same thing in some of the other communities? Because, you know, Sanger is a neighbor of ours, Kerman is a neighbor of ours, you've got Fowler, you've got Madera. How are the outlying areas, the markets in the outlying areas?
I love getting a listing in Selma, Kerman, Madera. They're hot markets. And you have supply and demand working for you there. There's only so many homes for sale at any given time in Kerman. So, and of course, there's a lot of people that like to live there. It's a nice community. But I'm going to say most of the people that buy out there have a tie to Kerman. But there's a lot of people that do have ties to Kerman or Madera, Selma, Kingsburg. So I love those markets.
So right now properties are high, and for those who bought maybe at the down of the market, there's a lot of equity there. So they're thinking, let's sell, let's sell, let's sell. Before they sell, what advice would you give them?
Well, I alluded to this earlier about moving twice so that you declutter the home. The other one is let's look around the house and see if there's any obstacles to financing. For example, let's say there's some broken windows or a lot of termite damage. Probably good to get that fixed so that the lender for the new buyer will make the loan. And this is what hurt the banks 5-10 years ago. They didn't want to touch a thing. They'd have bare wires hanging out of the ceiling and they wouldn't do anything. As is. So the new lender said, well, we're not going to touch that because that's a liability to our new buyer. So it could only go cash, and then the cash investors they really beat the prices down.
But should people sell just because they have equity in the home?
No, sell because it's what's right for you personally at that time. So whether you sell in a seller's market, a buyer's market, 5 years or 10 years from now, make sure it's the right move for you and your family. That's when it's right.
So some people think real estate, easy job, you make your own hours, you sell $1 million homes, you make big commissions, life is good. Tell us, you've been in the business for a long time. Tell us about the business.
For anybody thinking about getting into real estate as a career, I'd have to tell you this. It is a very, very hard job, but it is a most fantastic career. So if you're going to do it long term, I'm blessed because you can do it to help people, and the money follows. It's not too many jobs out there where you really don't have to worry about the money as long as you're taking care of clients. During 2008, I got really scared because of the recession going on. I called my father and I said, hey, what was it like during the Depression? He goes, oh, no. He goes, you don't need to worry about anything. I said, why not? He goes, you're in the service industry. And he said, during a depression, that means half the buyers go away. But if you stay in the top half as far as service, you'll get your share.
Interesting perspective.
Yeah, and he was right. I mean, I had, believe it or not, I had my best year ever during the lowest year that our local market had. I worked a lot.
Yeah,
I was scared.
Interesting. You have your own radio show.
Yes.
And you've been doing the radio show for like 9 years or something. It's been on for a while. Because I remember about 10 or 11 years ago when I first interviewed you on radio, you had just launched the program. So I know that, you know, it's been up for a while. Tell us about it.
Sure. It's on Saturday mornings on 9:40 a.m. ESPN. How we got on a sports station. Thank you.
Those are your two favorite things, housing and sports.
Yeah. In sport, I actually know more about sports than I do housing. But I love it because, and I look at it as a community service. And what drives me is I really hope the next time we go through a real estate recession or real estate downturn, I don't want to see Fresno in the top 10 in foreclosures. I want everybody to be so well advised out there that we don't even make the top 100 cities.
Speaking of that, back when we started getting in trouble was when the zero down, loans came out. Are banks lending the way they were before?
It's coming back, and it's not so much the zero down, because remember, the VA loan made to veterans has been no money down for 60, 70 years. And that's one of the best performing loans out there because they have some skin in the game. What really hurt a few years ago is when the lenders bundled together no money down, no job verification.
That's scary stuff.
Yeah, no documentation, adjustable rate mortgages, and on top of that, cash out refis. So they were encouraging you to use your home as an ATM machine.
So now, I heard after that, things got a little bit more strict as far as home buyers.
They got a lot more strict.
When interest rates dropped and people tried to refinance to get interest rates that were lower, maybe cut the term, they wanted an arm and a leg. I know, we went through it, so that's why I'm talking about it. Are we still saying that? Are we still seeing that banks are asking for everything and the underwriter comes back and asks you for more stuff?
Yeah, the underwriters are, they're our favorites. They ask for everything. But you know what? I'd rather have it this way than too loose. Back when there was the no documentation thing, that was a crazy market. And by the way, no documentation loans have a place in the market too. That's mainly for self-employed people that maybe have their first 2 years in business. They invested a lot in machinery. And so they don't have the fat tax returns to show. But they needed to have 25% down. The problem is when you could do no documentation and no money down.
Then came the issue.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how HOAs work. You've sold probably hundreds of homes that have HOAs. How does that work?
Sold one today that way.
Perfect segue into the conversation.
Right. And this is a good one because there's only 10 homes in there. So here's how an HOA works. Those 10 property owners have formed a partnership, not for the homes, but for the common area. Okay, now who's going to take care of the common area? Well, that's what the HOA decides, and that's comprised of the elected members of those 10 people. So they might say, well, hey, I've got a gardener who will do the common area, and we've got another guy that'll do the trees. And so let's say they divide up those costs at the end of the year, and it comes out to $100 a month for each person. Well, that $100 goes into a fund. They pay everybody. At the end of the year, they go, whoops, we were off $1,000, so now everybody's next year's HOA fees get raised a little bit to not cover up, that was a bad slip, to cover the shortfall that they had. Hopefully, they are future sighted and look for reserves because let's say the asphalt in the driveway, that's not going to last forever.
Your expenses may outweigh what you have in there sometimes.
Yeah. So, but usually, not usually, all the time, you get something for what you're paying for.
We're running out of time this week on the program. I want to get into a couple of more areas. What percent of your income should go towards housing? I know that back when the economy collapsed and then started building up again, people were saying a certain amount for the amount that should go into housing. In your opinion, how much of your income should go to housing?
Rule of thumb, about 1/3.
1/3. So you calculate 1/3. Do you include the utilities and stuff in that, or is that just your
No,
rent
that's
or
in the other
mortgage?
2/3.
So, 10 years from now, how do you see this market in the Fresno area?
Oh, I see Fresno booming. I see a vibrant downtown. I see I think the rest of California is going to wake up and say, you know what? It's not all about the ocean. It's also about lifestyle, and Fresno has that. And what I love about Fresno is maybe we don't have an ocean here, but it's only 2 hours away. Maybe we don't have the mountains right here, but that's only 1 hour away. So it's all very close.
Last topic, I wanted to get into it earlier, but for some reason we got on a tangent, which is fine. How do you get listings? Do people just kind of call you and say, hey, I've got this house for sale?
Here's how you do it. You take care of them, and they'll call you later. And I just got one where a few years ago, I gave them the advice not to sell because there were some issues on the title. And they were amazed that I was willing to walk away from the business, but it was truly in their best interest. They don't forget that. They call me up and they go, all right, we're ready. Now what?
So referral base for you is a big thing because you've been in the business for a long time.
Yeah, and it's great. Some people are really trying to live off of online leads. Those are hard.
And lastly, you're out everywhere. I see you all over the place. Why is it important for you to be out and about?
Well, my wife will tell you because I cannot sit down at home.
It was a great answer. We're out of time this week on the program, Don. It's always a pleasure having you on. You're our kind of expert in home selling, buying, and we'll call you in a few months and talk to you about the market then.
I'll be back. Thank you.
That wraps it up for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. You can watch more episodes of the Central Valley Ledger on CMAC's channel, Xfinity 93, Uverse 99, or on CMAC's website, www.cmac.tv. You can listen to episodes of the Central Valley Ledger on 90.7 FM, KFSR Fresno. Thank you to the volunteer crew that made this production possible. They're in the studio and behind the cameras now, making us look and sound good. To become a volunteer, visit CMAC's website and click on the membership tab. Thanks again to our guest, Don Scordino from Realty Concepts, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week with a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.